Hi, I'm James Ramsey, Group Product Manager here at GitLab for the create stage of the DevOps lifecycle. And this is a speed run through Gitaly. For those of you who are not familiar with Gitaly, Gitaly is a component of the GitLab application, and it's how we store our Git repositories. So to be more precise, this is a diagram which shows how different Git connections can come into the GitLab application. They can come through the Rails application. So that's the web application. When you go to gitlab.com or your GitLab instance and you see a list of files in your repository, or you view a file like the README or some source code, the web application is connecting to Gitaly and retrieving that data via gRPC. The other ways that you might be interacting with Gitaly through the GitLab application is via GitLab Workhorse and GitLab Shell. These are two specific services which allow HTTP and SSH connections to be terminated, and then the Git protocol is then passed on to Gitaly so that you can get the data you want when you connect to GitLab via your command line and you do a git clone or a git fetch or push over SSH or HTTP. Shell and Workhorse are the components that terminate those connections and bring it all the way through to Gitaly. So for users of GitLab, you don't really have to worry about Gitaly. It's behind the scenes. There's no interface that exposes it directly. There's nothing to manage or configure. So this is really a piece of the architecture of GitLab that's important to operators of the GitLab application. So people who are installing GitLab on their own servers or managing an existing installation of GitLab and need to scale it and expand it. And so one of the particular features of Gitaly is that it allows you to scale your GitLab instance. And what I mean by that is if you've got so many users that you can't fit it all on one server, Gitaly allows you to move the Git storage component onto a different box. And that is useful in a couple of different ways. Firstly, you can add multiple application services. If you've got lots and lots of web interface traffic, you can add multiple application services and they can all talk to one dedicated Gitaly node. The other situation might be you've got so many Git repositories and so much traffic coming from your CI servers, you might need to split the load across two Gitaly servers. And so Gitaly also allows you to shard your data across multiple Gitaly nodes. And then I guess finally, and something that we're working on at the moment, and I'll be walking through this in this speed run, is how to set up Gitaly in a highly available configuration so that you've got multiple Gitaly replicas. And if one of them goes down, another one can pick up. So let's walk through that a little bit later. So let's take a little look at a brand new GitLab installation and take a look at what Gitaly is doing out of the box. So we've got a couple of projects here. I'm going to look at the admin area, so only administrators have access to this. And if we go to the list of projects, let's take a look at this Git project. You'll see that the Gitaly storage name is default. So when you install GitLab out of the box, Gitaly is going to be running on the same server as the application server. And if I switch over and I go GitLab, CTL, tail, Gitaly, we can see the logs coming through from Gitaly. So Gitaly is running. We can see that it's listing last commits, doing all sorts of operations. You can also see the storage part, where the repository is located on disk. So Gitaly is running on every single GitLab server for quite a long time. So it's probably running on your server unless you haven't updated in 2 or 3 years. So yeah, that's essentially all you would need to do. If you go to settings, repository, these are some more detailed administrative settings, and storage is the relevant one here. And you'll see that we've only got one storage node. So that means that all new projects that are created are going to be stored on that Gitaly storage location, which happens to be on the same server as the application server. So I'm going to walk through now the configuration of multiple Gitaly nodes and a prefect node, which together will allow us to have another storage location that is highly available and stored across a bunch of other servers. So let's take a look at that. So this is the documentation for prefect, which is how a component that we've added to achieve Gitaly high availability. Let's take a look at the diagram. So we can see the application, workhorse, and shell. They should be familiar from the diagram we just looked at before. Over here, Rails, workhorse, shell. And instead of connecting directly to one of these Gitaly nodes, so what we're going to aim for is to connect to this proxy router, which is going to control the requests and route them to the correct replica and keep track of which one's master and which one's secondary, so that if one of them goes down, we can quickly flip over to the other one. So that's what the prefect component does. And then we'll have 3 Gitaly nodes in our cluster, so that if 1 or 2 of them go down, there's still 1 left that can service requests. So let's get into configuration. This is my GitLab server, and I've also configured a couple of other servers. So I've got a prefect node and 3 Gitaly nodes. Ultimately, I should have more than that, but I should probably have multiple prefect nodes. So prefect isn't a single point of failure, but I'll probably do that maybe next time I record one of these videos. So let's jump over the docs. Got some preparation information. So the first step is setting up a SQL server. And I'm just going to grab the IP address and we will start setting that up. All right. So I'm going to do this from the prefect node. I'm using a very secure password for this demo. Okay, so we're now connected. What do I need to run? I need to create a new user. And then I need to reconnect to that new user. Prefect. I think I'm getting a washing machine delivered. Oh dear, let's see if we can do this in 30 minutes before my washing machine arrives. Okay, so we've reconnected. Now we just need to create the database. Excellent, that's done. So we create the user first and then the user creates the database. That means that we know that the user has permissions to the database they just created. If we created the database and then granted permissions, it would be a little bit more complicated in the docs, but you could do that. All right, now we need to finish configuring the prefect node. So this is our proxy router. It's using that, it's going to use that SQL database for some state tracking information. So keeping track of replication jobs. Let's start configuring. If you've used Omnibus before, which is how you install GitLab on your own server, this should be pretty familiar, editing the config file. So I'm going to copy this. Okay, disabling everything except for prefect. Now we need to listen on some different network interfaces. Something went wrong there. I might have been out of edit mode. There we go. We're listening on all addresses, same for Prometheus. That provides metrics to Grafana, so we'll have a dashboard at the end of this demo. Okay, now we need to configure a strong token, very strong token. Now we need to configure our SQL server. Okay, address, okay. Here we go. Excellent. We've now configured our database. We're not using TLS certificates, so the defaults will suffice. Okay, so now we're going to configure our different storage nodes. So we now have to teach the router about the different Gitaly nodes that it can store data on and how they're related to each other. So we'll do this. Okay, so this is creating a virtual storage location called Prefect, which is made up of 3 physical storage locations. So Gitaly 1, 2, and 3. 2 and 3 will initially be replicas of Gitaly 1, but once we start running this and can enable automatic failover, primary will move around as nodes fail to automatically keep everything running just fine. So I need to copy and paste a bunch of IP addresses, not make any typos. Host. Okay. Gitaly 1. All right. And now we need to reconfigure and then verify that we can actually reach this new server. Close that, reconfigure, and then I'm just going to copy and paste this, which is going to ping the SQL server, make sure that we can reach that. Okay, complete. So let's check that we can reach the SQL database and everything looks good. Onward to the next step. So we need to do this for each Gitaly node. And actually the configuration of all 3 Gitaly nodes can be identical. So it's once you get the config right, it's just a copy and paste job. It also makes it easy to automate. If you're treating your Gitaly nodes like cattle and you're just bringing them up with some automation script, that would be easy to do. So first step again is to disable all the things that we aren't running. All right. Now we enable listen addresses as well so that we can accept connections and Prometheus metrics can be collected. Here's our secure authentication token for inside the cluster. You can have a different token for talking between the cluster and the application, but internally in the cluster, you need to use the same token. And then secret tokens, server URL. So when write operations come into Gitaly nodes, we call back to the Rails application to do different kinds of checks, like check permissions, check for file locks, other kinds of information. So because Git will receive the operation from whoever's making it, and then we can unpack it and look inside of what they're trying to do to the repo and then make the appropriate checks with the application to see if that is permitted. So I need to lab server URL. Okay, change that to okay. And now we're going to configure the storage locations on disk. This server is Gitaly 1, so technically we only need the Gitaly 1 path. And this is the same path on each server because each server is going to be configured identically. So this server, the router will only route requests to Gitaly 1 to the Gitaly 1 server as configured in the IP address that we configured in Prefect. So we can actually safely put all the data DIRs for all the Gitaly nodes in the same configuration on every single Gitaly node. That makes it really easy to just copy and paste. So that's exactly what we're going to do. All right. Now we're done. Let's reconfigure. What I should have done is copy and pasted all that. So I could have been doing this in parallel. We also need to restart because currently we can't reconfigure, doesn't do everything perfectly. So we need to restart Gitaly because there's a problem with the listen port. All right. So Gitaly 1 should be ready to go. So actually we can check this and we can see if we dial nodes only. So this is a check we should do at the end. So we can see a bunch of errors and we see a success. Checking health. Should be a positive success message for node 1. Node is healthy. Yes, excellent. So I think these are the ones to Gitaly 1. So we should be getting much more positive signals when we finish configuring the rest. For now, let's copy and paste all this. Okay. All right, we'll need to restart those when they're done. Great, that one's done. And this one should be nearly done. What I might do is also start tailing the logs so we can watch what's happening on these nodes. Great. And then let's run the health check. Oh, excellent. Success, 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 success on all 3 nodes. Our work here is done. Okay, so we've now configured the prefect node, we've configured all the Gitaly nodes. The next step is to make the application aware of this new storage location. So back over here on this is the main GitLab server. We're going to, there we go, in my history. There should be a git data dirt configuration somewhere, but I think we can actually just drop this in the top because it'll just be overriding the default. There we go. We need the prefect URL, the IP address in this case. We need to set the GitLab secret shell token. And the external URL has already been set. All right, the next step is to set up Prometheus monitoring. So remember we opened ports on all the nodes so that we could get Prometheus metrics. These allow us to observe what's going on, which is very important. Oh, did I? What happened here? Copy that. Yeah. So I think we need to change that to the prefect host as well. Okay. Okie dokie. Now we need to reconfigure. And we will also need to then verify that we can reach the prefect node that we added. So prefect simply looks like a Gitaly node. So it's like quite invisible. It implements the exact same interface as Gitaly. So that's why we can just drop the prefect cluster in as a replacement for a Gitaly node, because they implement all the same features. All right, can we talk to the prefect node? This is a very dramatic pause. Success, I didn't make any copy and paste errors that we're aware of yet. All right, so the next step is to take a look at the admin settings and see if everything's working. So remember this page? Let's refresh it and see if we can see our new storage node. Not yet. So we do cache this information because we don't want to have to be like checking storage information with every single repo call. Like every time you create a new repo, we want to be able to just say, okay, here's the location to store it. That does mean these settings sometimes take, I think they take about 60 seconds to propagate. While we're doing that, waiting, let's jump ahead to enable failover. So let's take a look at this. These docs have changed since I last looked at them. Okay, so I don't know why we're talking about config toml. Let's go to automatic failover. All we need to do is turn on this flag. So okay, that's not on that server. We have to do that on the prefect node. Right. Oops. All right, let's put it above here. So prefect will now prefect should now start automatically doing failover. So it'll be doing health checks to make sure nodes are up, and if it finds the primary node is down, it will automatically promote a node that is up to the role of primary. So that's useful. I think the other thing we should do is set up Grafana so that this documentation was just reordered, so it's a bit confusing. Let's no. There we are. Okay. Oh. Okay, so we'll enable the Grafana login form, which we need, and we'll reconfigure. Meanwhile, we should have had some success here. Excellent. So we can see the prefect storage location. So let's set that as the new default and save that change. And then the other thing we can do is we can take existing repositories and move them. So let's move one of these repositories to this new prefect node. The way to do that is through the docs GitLab API projects. So you edit the project. When you're an administrator, you can set the storage location, which is repository storage. So we need an access token to do that. Access token. Give me all the privileges. I think that's what I need. Name. No. Copy that. Actually, what I'm going to do is curl example. I always forget how to do this. All right. Well, request put header. Actually, I think there was documentation here. Why did I go to somewhere else? Here it is. Header, private token. Right. There's my private token. We're going to change the storage location to prefect. And now we just need to pop the URL in there. So that's going to be HTTP. Projects. And the ID, I think I've got 3 projects. So we can move project one, hopefully. Let's also try and move projects 2 and projects 3. And all right. My mouse is lagging. There it is. Okay. So let's go back. Here's my GitLab instance. And we'll go back to the admin area and take a look at those projects and see if any of them have been moved. So Hello World is the smallest project. It's still on the default storage. Maybe it hasn't been moved yet. It's probably in a queue behind the really big ones because I did 1, 2, then 3. So meanwhile, let's finish configuring Grafana because I left the last step because I was waiting for the reconfigure to finish. Great. jramsey.com.au/-grafana. All right, here we go. And do we have any dashboards? I don't think we get any. Some omnibus ones. So we can see some metrics already. Like GitLab ships with a bunch of metrics. So these are the Gitaly metrics. But we don't yet have one for Prefect. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new dashboard, add a query, and we're going to look for Gitaly maybe it's primary. Yeah, Prefect primaries. And this one's cool because it'll show us which node is primary and which one's not. Can I read this? Edit. Edit. Save. Okay. Prefect. Great. So we can see that number 1 is primary, and then 2 and 3 are secondaries. And so we should see this invert when we do a failover between the nodes. But let's just check if any of these have moved. Well, the lazy solution, the impatient solution, is to create a new project. Greetings. Rocket emoji. And let's check if this new greetings project ended up where we thought it would. Excellent. It's on the prefect storage location. And what am I doing? We are going to edit it. Well, let's actually first flip over and see the activity coming through on the prefect nodes. So remember how I was tailing these logs, right? We can see these are just health checks. But we should actually see more activity come through on this primary one because all the read requests are being served by the primary. So if I was to edit this file, you'll see that we're generating all this traffic. Hello, hello. And that's a result of this file, this node being on the primary and this node storing this repo. You can also see that there was this checksum calculation, that's indication of replication. And all these things can also be observed from the dashboard, but I'm too lazy to configure all the charts because next time I demo this, we'll get a dashboard by default and I won't have to configure it by hand. So now that this is all working, let's take a look and see what happens if I stop the primary node. Stop Gitaly. Gitaly is now down. That was the primary node. Let's fail. If we can catch anything in the logs, we can see some health checks are failing. So that means that prefect's detecting this node is down and will mean it's now promoting a different node to primary. So if I make this bigger and refresh, hopefully we should see an inversion here. Excellent. So Gitaly 2 has now been promoted to primary, which means if I reload this page, it's working. And we can see that now Gitaly 2 is actually generating all the traffic. So if we edit this, we're seeing now all that traffic flow through there. So this is automatic failover in action. We took a default installation, which had Gitaly running on the same server with everything. We split out Gitaly onto its own cluster. So we actually had 3 Gitalys. So there's redundancy, and we also configured the prefect proxy router that handles and manages the failover between replicas, and we configured the SQL database. So that's a quick run through of Gitaly, and I guess the core feature of Gitaly, which is allowing you to split out the configuration and scale it to meet your needs. If you have any questions, get in touch, leave a comment, and I'll be trying to do these demos regularly to just show you what Gitaly can do. Thanks for your time.